Welcome, my friends. I am so excited to have a guest with us today. Eli, how are you?
Good. It's so good to be here.
Eli, you are the founder of Attachment Nerd. I'm already in with everything you're talking about. So, will you give just a little brief introduction about you and your business?
Yes. So I am a therapist. I am someone who inherited a lot of generational trauma, hard family patterns, and went through a lot of my own personal therapy. I'm a mom of three. And in 2022, I got an itch. I was like, I've been doing this clinical work for so long, and I have a lot of thoughts. There's a lot going on in my head around how I could potentially help people understand what's going on in their relationships and what's going on inside their relationship to themselves. And so I decided I was ready to write a book. And I knew that in order to get a book deal, I would need to have an audience.
Welcome to The Social Strategist, the podcast for those ready to level up their business with social media marketing. It's straight shooting information to drive measurable results. Here's your trusted strategist and host, Michelle Gifford.
So I was just sitting in my kitchen one night and telling my husband, I'm going to start talking on social media. And he was like, oh boy. And I was like, I feel like that's the place to start. And we sat around playing with different names. And then I was like, attachment nerd. And he was like, oh, that's so you. I was like, yeah. And then I just honestly half court shot at it. I just was like, I'm just going to throw this ball across the court a bunch of times all day long and see if something goes in. And
And a couple things went in.
yeah, a couple of shots went in.
That was back in 2022 is when you got on Instagram.
Yeah, so it's
And
been about 2 years.
And you've grown a ton.
Yes. It's funny because I'm not in the social media marketing world. So I've only come to realize through folks like you that my level of growth is maybe a bit of a unique experience. An outlier. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Actually, really, it's been about 1.5 years on Instagram. It's been 2 years on TikTok. And then Facebook also. Facebook's a big audience for me too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now I have so many questions that I want to talk about. So I get a lot of people who come to me and they're like, okay, I have been a practicing whatever, or, I have this personal business and now I want to take it online. You've already worked through a lot of blocks, I'm sure, but what things did you have to go through to be like, okay, now it's time to take it to the whole world and not just my clinic or my immediate people?
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a great question. I think the honest answer is probably those years of therapy were a
Yeah.
part of that. I had to work through some of the things I felt about myself or traumas of how other people felt about me or just being a female in the world and having a strong opinion and what kind of energy that might bring at me. So I'd say I had a lot of work to do to get to a place where I could feel like my voice has value. I also think I did this really important thing where I did not believe my voice has more value than somebody else. I think sometimes people think in order for me to speak, I have to have something completely unique to say. I have to have something that is better than what everyone else out there is doing. And I don't think that's true. I think that what we all long to hear from people is just their authentic take on things. And so I didn't go out there being like, I have a better thing to say. I was like, I have some thoughts, and they're my particular thoughts on this. And other people have thoughts on this too, and that's so great. I'm going to add my voice into the conversation as opposed to I'm going to create some kind of new revolution or new thing. I'm adding my voice. That's what I'm doing.
I see a lot of people struggle with that. They're like, I don't have anything to add. It's all been done. Why would I even say anything? So
Right.
can you talk to your past self who worked through it? Let's talk about that because I know that's a big issue with women.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the other thing. I also listened to people who around me were saying, you need to be saying some of this somewhere. So I also had encouragement around me. And I think I chose to believe those people. Like, oh, but maybe I have a voice that might resonate with other people around this thing. I think my younger self would have been afraid that someone's going to misunderstand me. That's right. They are. That is a part of the process. And you're not in control of that. I think I have a lot of sense of serenity, what I can control, what I can't control. I also think I got really good at listening to my desire. So where I think this gets tricky for people is I think sometimes people think, okay, I want to do this thing, therefore it needs to look like this. And you got to be yourself. And for some people, getting online is not going to be making reels because it's just not authentically them to sit and talk and make a video. But for me, I'm like the opposite extreme. It's no, there needs to be like dress up and characters, and it needs to be playful and silly. And that's authentically me. And I'm also not going to look exactly like someone who's maybe got more of that professional only bent. That's not me. So I think identifying like, where is your desire? I do want to play dress up and act out characters and make reels. I want to do that. It's not, I want to, or I want the outcomes of that. It's I genuinely enjoy that process. So if you're someone that does not like to teach, please don't try to teach online in that way. Find another alternative. Do you love to create digital versions of things? Like make some really beautiful slides, and one of the ones called where you flip through them.
Carousels, yep.
Thank you. I was going to call them Canvas because I make them on Canva.
Yeah.
Don't try to be somebody else. You have to be you. And part of being you is being in alignment with your desire and what makes you feel alive.
Yeah. Were you able to just step into Instagram like that and be like, okay, I'm going to do dress ups. We're going to do role play situations. Did you know that headed in, or did you have to figure that out?
No, I think I figured that out. So I started on TikTok, which I think is an
is-
interesting thing because I think I had never used TikTok. I was not a part of TikTok. So I was like, oh, this is this tool. Actually, I had a nanny who's one of my favorite humans on earth who was like, you should be on TikTok. And I was like, TikTok? What is this talking you're talking about? And then I started playing around. But yes, there was a huge evolution. And if you watch some of my earlier videos, much, much earlier, there's a different vibe to them because I was trying to figure out, I'm a little more intense in my early videos. There's more hand gestures. And now I'm still a hand gesturing person, but I think I've dialed it in to be a little more like you're in my living room and we're having a conversation. But yeah, that evolves over time. And new characters come to me and I try that out. And my husband and I laugh because some of my favorite videos of myself are the ones that are the least viral. But I love making them. Like I have ones where I was King Triton. I like had this whole King Triton phase. I thought they were hilarious. So like he goes to therapy with me and we have this whole thing. They got some love, but like not very much love. I think it's a real ongoing acceptance that there's no perfection to this. You're just trying things and you're doing what feels good and what feels right. And you're going to have a lot of different reactions and experiences, both within yourself and from your audience. And just keep learning. I think I see every single post I do as an opportunity for learning, as opposed to an opportunity for performing or succeeding. It's like, I wonder what this one will do or not do. Who will resonate with it? What will people say? Where will I have missed the mark? What will my blind spots have been that I didn't realize in terms of equity or whatever? I'm just curious what's going to happen from this.
And was that something that you naturally just came with to Instagram and TikTok to be like, okay, like this post that I'm putting out about King Triton doesn't mean anything about me. It just is giving me information about my audience, because that's awesome. It's a way we should look at Instagram, but a lot of people struggle with that.
I think I already had that because of the work I had.
Yeah.
I'm not gifted that. That's not a natural trait. That is something I had to work to do to believe. I guess I really do at this point in my life. I'm in my 40s. I'm like, I'm worthy. I don't think I'm more worthy than other people. I don't think I'm the shit. I don't think everything's great about me. I think my shit stinks. I think all those things, but I deeply also believe I'm worthy. And I'm as worthy, I think, of being a voice in the chorus of humanity as I am worthy of love and worthy of acceptance and kindness. But yeah, so that is a privilege I think I had going into all of this. I think that's probably a big part of my success, is that people can feel that off of me. And I think the average person is really hungry to be able to feel authentically and freely themselves. So when you can sense that in someone else, I think there's something about that's very alluring. So I think that's part of why people are allured to me. I made a conscious choice probably like 3 months into doing the work to be like, I'm going to be vulnerable on the internet. I'm going to make videos where you can literally see where I just picked my latest zit and I got no makeup on and I'm like, this is what I look like in the wrong lighting. I'm going to hold the authority of my voice in that image as much as I'm going to hold the authority of my voice when I'm all dolled up and whatever. I'm going to be honest about the parts that are hard, because even as I teach people about the research and about what I do know, I don't know everything. And even knowing a lot of things doesn't mean you don't struggle. And so I made a couple of really conscious choices going in about my ethics around social media, I think. But I think that also helped me because some of my most viral posts are my recently zit picked posts. And so it's like I can get that data to be like, it isn't about how I appear or how lovely I seem in some way, shape, or form. It's about all of us connecting together. So I'm always looking for the connection piece in what I'm doing. Like, how could this connect? How could this be helpful to someone? How could this inspire someone? How could this be helpful to me? Like sometimes I post things that are just because they're helpful for me. Because I'm like, I need to say this, or I am processing this, or it would feel good or authentic to put this out there. Yeah. Good therapy session for me right now, by the way.
This is so good. I know.
Process my social media experience. Because no, I mean, it's a weird thing. My friends probably aren't that interested in hearing about my inner workings on how I've done my social media.
I know. And that's also a whole thing too, right? You have your professional life, you have your personal life, and then you have a social media life. And it's a really interesting balance to
Yes.
hold in balance, I guess, just because we have all these different parts that are being played. And I think one of the best things about your content is what you were saying is that connection. And I think your vulnerability plays into that. How else are you thinking about, or even knowing if a post hit, right? When you're like, did this connect? How do you look at that and say, yeah, this connected to people?
One, and you can always tell with some sense of how many likes and shares and whatever, because it's like what compels us to like something and share something is that sense of I'm connected to this, right?
Yeah.
My son started kindergarten during the pandemic, so he was online. And his teacher, who's a very masterful teacher, came up with this whole thing where if they were feeling a connection to something during their time, that they would put up a little heart. I like that because then they could see each other and then we don't have a cacophony of voices going off or whatever. And they would put this little heart. And I think that's what social media knows about human beings is when we feel a connection is when we're most likely to like something or to share something or whatever. But I also really look through the comments. How are people responding in terms of, did it dig up some deep questions? That's a sense that it resonated because it's got people thinking and wondering. Did it bring a lot of enthusiastic high fives and hearts and whatever? And yeah, how much is there a conversation happening around it? But again, it's sometimes what resonates for me isn't going to resonate for everybody, and that's okay.
Just the amount of chill that you're bringing to Instagram is like maybe my favorite thing. You're like, hey, listen, I'm just going to tell you what I'm thinking and it's going to help you, hopefully.
And the other thing, which I'll be curious your expertise on this, is I do feel like the algorithm gods are finicky gods, and that there are times where I'm like, hey, I know based on the past that what I just put out would have really hit hard with people, and it really didn't. And so there's probably something going on. There's been some kind of a change, or I'll have moments where every single thing I put out is just like, and I'm like, I must be hitting something on the algorithm. Also, it's not just that what I'm creating is gold. Something's lining up, and I don't always know what. And so I think it's important when you do hit the times where you're feeling thwarted, but you still stay into that place of trust with yourself. I think I've really had to learn. I'm not creating for the likes and the shares, because once I start trying to do that, I'm no longer within my own kind of self. I'm trying to be something for someone else as opposed to just trusting my process.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that you came to Instagram with an identity of who you are and who you wanted to be pretty formed. Of course, you were filling out like, how am I as a content creator? But you're a therapist. You knew that you wanted to have this book ready to write. And so I think that really shaped your success on Instagram because you didn't come to Instagram trying to figure out who you are or what you wanted to sell.
Oh, what a beautiful way to say that. I wasn't asking Instagram, who am I?
Yeah.
I was putting out into Instagram, this is what I'm passionate about and I want the world to know. And I don't want to create some kind of a mythology that like, okay, I did that and then I never have felt insecure in that space. Of course, those feelings come up, or like people will say mean things. I haven't had as much of that as I thought I would. Honestly, I've had way more positivity than I thought. But things come up, or people don't like things, or you get accused of different things. You have to work through that. But I think because at core, I really do trust myself. I'm like, I know I'm not out here trying to like sell a false message or, I don't know, use people in some way. And so when those accusations come up, it's like, well, that's not true.
Yeah.
But
And
I can feel it still.
You feel it, right? You feel it.
I'm a feeler. I definitely feel it. I definitely feel it. But I think I'm able to filter it. Like it's gonna
Yeah.
come a little bit and then I'm like, that doesn't need to stay there.
Yeah. Let's talk about someone who maybe haven't gotten to that place where they can filter that through. How would you work with them to work through the negative comments or even the fear of negative comments? Because what I've seen, unless you're a really controversial account, the
They're not
comments are
actionable.
usually pretty nice. People come out and say stuff, but whatever. But
It's
how do
rare.
they? It's more rare than we think it is. We have this perception that Instagram's just mean. And it's actually a lot of people are nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So, how do you work through that? Let's say we were helping someone who's like, I'm either afraid to do it because there might be mean comments, or I've actually received some hate and I don't know what to do with it.
So whenever I get negativity of any kind, because I don't think all negativity is hate, which sometimes I think that's a whole other
Yeah.
discussion. But if I get any negativity, I ask myself this question: is this an insult or is this feedback? Okay. So feedback says, hey, something you did is problematic in a particular way, and here's the path towards being less problematic. And I'm going to give you an example of a post I did. So I did a post talking about how I'm going to teach my children not just to look for like a sense of consent, meaning like someone says yes to something, but consent is looking for enthusiastic yes, that we're looking for this person is emphatically interested in what we're interested in. And I go through and say why, blah, blah, blah. And I had a large group of people saying this is problematic for those of us who are neurodivergent because we don't always appear enthusiastic. That was fabulous feedback, right? Now, some people did that feedback in really mature ways. Hey, thank you for this message. I really want to point out, however, that blah, 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 blah. This is pretty neurotypical advice. Some people were like, another neurotypical bitch thinks she can, what, I don't know, whatever the thing is. But I'm filtering through going, is there actual feedback here? And so if there's a whole chorus of people saying something, well, then it's probably feedback. And I see all feedback as an opportunity to become more of who I want to be in the world, which is someone who cares about others and does no harm, right? Okay. Now, if there are things in there like, I don't know, I talk a lot about healing and recovery and being kind to our kids, and sometimes someone who's not in a recovery space is very triggered by that, because if they were to consider what I had to say, it would mean that maybe they'd done something not great with their kids or with their spouse or with whoever, and they'll come on here and be like, this hoity-toity, uptight, blah, blah, blah. It's just literally, there's no path forward. It's just an insult. And so what I do with insults is I sort of imagine people in a bubble and I wish them well, and I just try to let them float away from me. They're not mine. They're not giving me any opportunity to learn from them or teach them. And so it's time for them to go. And so just let them go. And I think about how the whole world cannot be our audience. That's impossible. There are 8 billion people. That would be weird. If everyone on earth resonated with you, liked you, was kind to you, you're going, these are not my people. That's okay. I can let them go. And I know creators who handle that in a bunch of different ways. I delete only the comments that I feel would make my other people feel unsafe, if it's something that would make the group feel unsafe. But I don't tend to delete things that are like just rude and dumb, because I'm like, that's fine. You can say that to me, whatever. It makes you look bad and makes you look immature. It's not actually harming me. I respond to things occasionally, but generally when someone's coming in hot and insulting, they just don't get a response. And that's part of me putting them in the bubble. I'm not sending my energy to you. Another way to think of this is, okay, so let's say we're all farmers and we all have a certain amount of fields that we have been allotted. Some of those fields are not going to be fertile. And no matter how much we toil in them, our crop is not going to grow. So instead of pouring the precious limited water that we have onto those fields, we want to pour that water into the fields that are fertile. And so in every post that I put up, there are going to be fertile and infertile fields. And I'm going to pour my water into the fertile fields rather than wasting it where there won't be any growth.
Which is so valuable to think about that, because I know people who will just double down on the negativity because it feels like you have to defend yourself and, you know, you want to stand up. But there are people that are there for you. There are people who 100% want to be all in with you. And that's the field we should be watering.
Yep. That's funny. I'm Scotch-Irish is one of my inheritance. I'm also German, but I feel like the Scotch-Irish parts of my genetics are more like in my brain. But anyway, so I have an honor thing. If someone has dishonored me, I have that instinct to want to be like, to the field. I must defend my honor. I must. And I think I've just learned over the years that the most effective way to defend my honor in this context is to not engage. is to show that person and other people in the conversation that I'm not even giving it the time of day. It doesn't get the time of day. So that kind of helps my inner Irish woman. I have defended myself. I've defended myself most effectively. I used to be effective to defend with the sword and the words, but in this case, it's not.
You're sending a message. You're sending a message by not sending a message, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And most people just go away. And here's the other thing. Most of the people that are going to be terrible on your page are not your followers. So they've already decided not to follow you. Okay. Again, not really worth my time and investment. I'm going to let you go. Go and enjoy that terrible bitterness that you have inside of your heart and life.
I wish you well.
Yeah. Yeah, truly. I wish you healing. I hope that whatever this is gets healed. But I'm not going to be a part of that because you're aiming the wound at me. So I can't help you right now. Sorry.
And it allows you to focus on connecting with your actual audience.
Yes.
And that's huge. So I would love for you to talk about that. How do you build that connection with your audience? And what things are you actively doing with your content to make that, oh, okay, we're connected?
Yeah. I'm actively replying to comments. So I engage people and people ask questions and I do my best to answer them when I can. And I think people can feel in my responses. I always make sure that people can tell they were received. So if someone has a question, I'm going to really give them an answer that shows them I've considered what they're asking. Or, if they say, thank you so much for this post, I'm writing back. You're so welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me. I say that all the time because I really am so glad everyone's there with me. I still can't believe that almost 1 million people are interested in hanging out with me across my platforms. I really can't believe that. Like, what? I feel gratitude. I know that people are spending their precious time listening to me run my mouth. So I want to make sure that I am honoring their personhood in that as much as I can. Now, I can't answer every comment, so I don't, but I try to do what I can. And then I'm listening. People will say, can you make a video about this or about that? And I can't always, but it's getting into my psyche. I'm thinking, okay, this is what people are wanting more help with. How can I put more content out there that is actually helpful for them? But I think it's also just presence. It's what I do everywhere else in my life too. Like when I show up.
Are you just posting what you'd post on TikTok over to Instagram? Do you have separate strategies or you're just posting the same?
First of all, I think I got froze on TikTok. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure why, but I have not budged in 8 months in terms of my follower count on TikTok. So I don't know if I got shadow banned or whatever, or if the algorithm changed in a way that I really need to change up my strategy and I don't have time for that. So what I basically do is because Instagram is my biggest following, I focus primarily on that. And what tends to work on Instagram tends to work on Facebook for me. It's not 1-to-1, but it's enough. So those automatically post. And then I occasionally put things on TikTok when I remember to do it. But I don't always remember right now. I'm kind of mad at TikTok since it's blocking me. But no, I don't know. It depends on how much time you have. I do think that there are different strategies, but I don't have that time. So what I do is I make a video on my camera roll. And I tend to make it in little clips because that just helps my brain. So if it's a minute-long video, there's probably like 6 clips of me making little tiny statements. And then I loop them all together through CapCut. So I have CapCut on my phone. I link them all together. I add captions. I might add a titling. And then I upload that back to my phone. And then I take that video and upload it to all the different socials. And then write captions. And what's great is TikTok finally increased their captions so that now the caption I use for Instagram and Facebook can also be used on TikTok. There was a period where I had to edit it down and that was annoying.
That's perfect. A lot of yours are talking head videos or they are the role playing ones. And that's a lot of just talking to the camera. So I think it is super helpful to be like, she's not just taking this in one take.
No,
not just
sitting down. I did that early on. And I do actually think there's some value to that. I think sometimes when people can tell that you are just talking continuously, it makes them feel like they're in a conversation with you. So I actually have had the thought recently, I need to start doing a little bit more of that. But for the most part, it's just so much easier to have a thought, pause, have a thought. The other thing I'll tell everyone is my best videos, meaning the ones that have the most impact in terms of resonance. There's always a very clear hook. There's a very clear identification of me, who I am, and why you should listen to me. And then there's a takeaway that is instantly applicable to somebody's life. So it's 3 tips or 2 insights or one particular thing you can do when blah, 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 blah. So it's like you're hooking them, they understand why they're listening to you, and then they're getting something of value from you. And it's concise. I'd say those are the ones that make the most ground.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's an easy formula for people to take and just say, hey, I've got to add value. And I need to make sure that value is really clear to people with the hook and
Yes.
why they should care about me giving them this value, giving them that backup of, hey, I've been doing this a while, but therapist forever.
Yep.
So I think that's huge. So I would love to now just talk a bit about, and we got into this a little, but about being a therapist. Come on with your therapist hat right now.
Okay.
Put it on. And let's talk about the fears that people have about putting themselves out there on Instagram.
Mm.
And I know you work through a ton before coming to Instagram, but I also know you work with a lot of women and families. And so you know these fears well.
Oh.
And Instagram just makes them bigger, I feel like.
So what I would say is this, we're all relational creatures. So our sense of self develops in the context of our relationships. And in specific, our early attachment relationships, which is part of why I nerd out on this research so hard. And so if you grew up with caregivers who were able to be deeply attuned, emotionally responsive, who delighted in you when you walked into the room, who thought your ideas were great and your paintings were great and believed in you, you probably have less of a barrier in putting yourself out there and stuff like that. Because there is a deeply internalized sense of my needs matter, my views matter, I am worthy of taking up space. So if on the other hand, you had caregivers that were wounded and unresolved in their own sense of self, they may have made you feel dramatic when you were emotional or when you had an opinion, or made you feel like you were being defiant when you didn't agree with them. And so now you come to social media and your nervous system is prepped and ready for those types of dismissive or rejecting or humiliating responses from other people. And I hope you can hold on to what we both said earlier, which is actually most of the people on social media are incredibly kind and generous. So here's the good news. I made an entire workbook for this for people because that was part of my goal was, okay, I'm doing this with all my clients, but I can't see all of these folks. I want there to be something people can take and use. So my workbook is called Securely Attached. And when you work through it, here's what you do. You go section 1, where my story began. And I help you process what kind of information you got from your growing up and why did that make it either natural to be authentic and close with people or uncomfortable to be authentic and close with people. And then it takes you through a section called Where You Are Now, which is what happened in your coping patterns because of what you experienced when you were little. So how did you learn how to dismiss yourself? No, that was stupid. Why did I say that? That was dumb. Is that a voice that you have in your head? What would it look like to consider a voice that sounds a little bit more like, hey, I see where you were going there. That wasn't, I'm seeing it. Let's see how we can fine tune that instead. And then the last section is teaching you how to build relationships where you're securely attached. And I'll tell you, this is one of the number one keys to being confident anywhere, but in social media in specific, because we are wired for belonging. So if I have my people and my people think I'm great and they think I'm smart and funny and I've got something to say, and I come out up here and I bring some of those same things, and some people think that also, but other people don't, I'm so much more protected emotionally because I already have belonging. So again, I'm not looking for Instagram to tell me who I am. I'm not looking for social media to be a place of belonging. I have belonging. I know who I am. And so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make the world a better place, or I'm trying to grow a business that I believe in because it's going to help my family or myself or whatever. I'm not here trying to find myself. I'm here bringing myself. And so, I mean, easier said than done. This is not like you're bloop, bloop, plug these two things in and instant results advice. This is like put in that deep work and people will be drawn to you. And some people will not like you and it won't matter as much.
Yeah. And I've seen that, especially with how Instagram used to be. I know you're kind of new to Instagram in the last few years. Instagram used to be, when it first started, it was very much, hey, let me just share all of me. I just have to share my family, and I have to share my kids and my personal thoughts and my deep desires of everything.
Mm,
And so I think there's this whole generation of Instagram people who that's kind of where they found their worth, is sharing so much. And now Instagram has changed to where it is more like, okay, we're showing up. We have the specific thing we're talking about. This is how we're specifically serving. It's actually a lot easier and better. I think also a lot healthier.
because people weren't just saying, I'm going to share my whole self. They were going to share an image of their whole self, right? So when
100%. Yeah.
maybe there was pieces of authenticity, but what ended up happening was kind of this like neutral pink thing where like everybody is just very perfectly beautiful with natural light on the beach with their children in their linen. Like, what happened? Do people look like in real life? No, a few people are. But I think that there's a bit of a movement away from that right now, is what you're saying. Also, it's less like, hey, let me show you how I'm perfect in all these ways, and more like, what's your niche? What are you about? What's the little impact that your one life will be making in the world? And the more you are doing that with like deep self-acceptance, I think the more electrifying you will be for people.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for this hard right turn where it's like, okay, we don't have to do that anymore. That's exhausting.
Yes.
No one really loves that. It doesn't help anyone. And I think it leads into one of the other fears I hear a lot. There's some fear about like, how are people going to judge me? But I also know that people won't, especially women, show up and show their faces. That's really hard to show who they are and what they look like.
Yeah.
And so let's walk through some of that coaching.
Yeah. Let's acknowledge that there is a thing such as pretty privilege, right? And pretty privilege is very racist. It's you have to have these particular types of features, and your body needs to be this type of a size, and this is what it looks like. And all women, regardless of how your body does or does not fit that standard, are aware of that. So we go into these spaces knowing that there's this hot or not toggle going on against us, which is so sad. My hope for our daughters as the world goes on is that there is so much more interest in what we have to say than in what we're wearing while we say it. And I say that as somebody who loves a good fancy earring and some makeup and some clothes. That's authentically me. I came out of my mother's uterus like, where are my accessories? Had I been born a man, I think it still would have been the same thing. That is who I am. However, that is not authentically who everybody else is. So I would say one part of it is being able to look at yourself and go, the most revolutionary thing I can do for myself and my fellow women is to pay more attention to what I have to say and to the people who are actually engaging what I have to say, than to the people who are focused on what I look like. And know yourself and your story. So some women, that the world is going to stereotype you as not attractive. That's their very first assault on you. Please know that is the very first attempt to get you to stop talking and taking up space. For those of you who are somewhat beautiful or very beautiful in terms of the standard, the first assault on you is going to be focusing on that instead of what you have to say, is going to be complimenting you on your looks instead of your message, or criticizing you for wearing too much makeup or being too sexy. The whole point is, as a woman, no matter what, when you have a message to share, you are going to be attacked in some way, shape, or form for what you look like. Whether that's you're not pretty enough, you're too pretty, you use your prettiness in the wrong way, or just simply your prettiness as a distraction from what you're saying. You're going to be defaced as an attempt to keep you from talking and filling up leadership positions and making money in the world. And so I would say, like, your personal rebellion is owning your body as radically, beautifully human, exactly as it is. And knowing that the angle that's coming at you, the angle of attack that's coming at you, is simply designed to keep you silent. So rather than hiding and allowing that, come out fighting. I just did a video this week where I talked earlier about my zits, but I've got wrinkles. I still get adult acne, and it's painful and it's obnoxious. But I felt a real empowerment videotaping myself in a way that I was like, it's right there. It's on my chin. It's pretty big. There's no one who's going to watch this video and be like, oh, I didn't see that. It's obvious. And I feel an empowerment in doing that, because I'm like, you can't keep me off my screen even when I don't look like you think I should look. I'm going to be here. I'm here in all of my shapes and all of my forms. And so I think use it to empower you as opposed to disempower you. And just remember, the whole thing's malarkey. It's malarkey. Women are not more or less beautiful or more or less valuable according to the way they fit the beauty standard. That's not a thing. That's a made up thing. You don't look at your friends and think she's hotter than she is, and so I'm going to spend a little more time with her. You feel their soul, right?
Yeah. I really love hey, this is our rebellion. We don't have to accept this. And we also will not, should not, cannot let it silence us.
Mhm.
And that's what it does. And it makes me really angry about it because I'm like, like your voice though.
Yeah.
And we don't know our voice a lot of times until we start sharing it. We
Yeah.
don't know what we're passionate about until we have the opportunity to say something. And then we find that out. And so to silence it before you even let out a word,
Yeah.
it just hurts me.
The opposite of poor body image is not believing you are beautiful. It is believing that your presence is more valuable than your appearance.
Just say that again. Just say it again.
The opposite of poor body image is not believing that you are beautiful. It is believing that your presence is more powerful and more valuable than your appearance.
We're going to cross stitch that on a pillow is what we're
Yeah, for sure.
And you're
It's
probably
on
gonna
my,
write it in
it's
the
a
book.
post on my, you'd have to probably scroll through my thing.
I saw that today as I was watching your content and I was like, I just love that so much because we have a lot of things and most of it's internal stuff that we're the one that's not letting us speak because we don't think we're pretty enough. We're afraid that someone's going to judge us. We're afraid to be wrong.
Yeah.
And the truth is that we have to be powerful. We have to put ourselves out there, right? We have to be vulnerable. We have to make mistakes and allow ourselves to do that.
Brené Brown talks about getting in the arena. And I think she's such an incredible example. The first time she really put herself out there, it blew up big time. And she talks about some of the very first comments were people fat shaming her. That was there, right? And for those of us who've fallen in love with Brené Brown, I was like, oh my gosh, what if she had stopped talking? Oh my gosh, or what if she had never talked at all? What if she had never gotten up on that TED Talk stage? We need her. I need her.
I need her.
Maya Angelou. I think of Toni Morrison. I think of like the women of color who have like taken up space when they're dealing with a different level of vitriol coming at them. They've got the patriarchy and the white supremacy ready to take them down. Your voice matters. And if you aren't sure what to say yet, figure out how to believe that you matter outside of these places. Find your voice in real relationships. And I don't want to say that how we connect online isn't real relationships, because actually I've made some really good friends since I've done this. There's some really powerful connections that happen, but you have to have that sense of shield between you, and the haters will come to some degree. I don't want anyone to think, oh, there's this way to do it right, and then you won't have the haters. No, you're going to have the haters. But if you feel a sense of belonging and worthiness in your other relationships, you're much more insulated against the vitriol that's coming towards you.
Yeah, and to have some experiences outside of Instagram. A lot of people come to Instagram to find their business, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, what am I going to sell here? Who am I going to become? Like we talked about at the beginning. And there's some value in, I did this offline. I'm doing this other stuff besides Instagram, and it's bringing power to how I teach on Instagram.
Yeah, I think so. To me, social media is a tool as opposed to it being a place.
Yeah.
So I think if you're looking to find place and social media, I think you'll end up being someone else's tool, or you'll be the product of someone else's tool versus coming in with a real sense of, hey, I'm going to use this tool in a particular way, and here's why I'm here, and here's what it's for. I think that's what I'm going to be teaching my children.
Yeah, 100%. In closing, I want to know about your book. Will you tell us now? We all want to read all the words that you've ever written. I know you have a book that's out and then one that's coming. So tell us about those.
Okay, so book one is my mission to help all adults work through their childhood, work through some of those insecurities, and learn how to build secure relationships. It's a workbook. It's called Securely Attached. The subtitle is Transform Your Attachment Patterns into Loving, Lasting Romantic Relationships. It's not just for romance. My editor made me pick a lane. I was like, fine. But it's really for any of those close relationships that you have, those bestie relationships, relationships with your family. But it's going to help you process your own nervous system information, how you feel inside your body as a result of your stories. And you can buy that anywhere you buy books. Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Target, all those places. And then my second book, which I like to call a bookie book, because it's not a workbook, so it's a bookie book, is coming out in the fall, and it's my parenting book. So it's called Raising Securely Attached Kids. And it's how do we cultivate this type of relationship with our children in a way that helps them have the type of childhood they don't have to heal from later. They get that connection and mirroring and attunement from us. And I'm so excited about it. I can't wait for you all to get your hands on it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. The workbook's coming. I'm going to work through it. It's going to be awesome. I am so excited. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. And I'm so grateful you'd come on and share it with my audience because they need you. And we love your voice here online.
Thank you for just letting me process this part of my life. It's a very real, surreal part of my life. So it's so lovely to just talk about it with you.
Yes, I've loved it. And we've learned a lot. So thank you for being here. And thank you, listeners. And we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to The Social Strategist. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on amazing content.